This is First Class Kevin Pandorf,
In first class, Elijah Parent.
and you're listening to Core Conversations, a podcast from the United States Coast Guard Academy Alumni Association. We're coming to you from Studio 1887 here in the Alumni Center, where we connect cadets with alum to talk about leadership, career paths, and the real experiences that shape life in and beyond the Academy.
Today's episode features Lieutenant Commander Katie Williams, class of 2012, an officer whose career in the prevention field highlights something we don't always hear enough around the Academy. From marine inspections to the Marine Safety Center and serving as a technical advisor on the Titan submersible investigation, her story really challenges the idea of what a typical Coast Guard path looks like.
What stood out to me right away is how much of her journey wasn't linear. She talks about thinking she'd go one direction as a cadet, pivoting early in her career, and then continuing to evolve based on what she actually enjoyed and where she was making an impact.
And beyond just career decisions, there's a strong theme of self-advocacy throughout this conversation. Whether it's speaking up about assignments, navigating dual military family challenges, or pursuing opportunities that weren't guaranteed, she really emphasizes that no one is going to know what you want unless you say it.
So, Elijah, when you think about everything she shared, what was one insight that stuck with you the most?
I think the most important thing that I remember was she talked about how you need to always build trust as quickly as you can with your new command, because obviously they're not going to know you when you're coming into a new position. You have to build that trust and show them that you're knowledgeable, that you've done the work, you're there for a reason. And I just think that was really insightful to me.
I agree with that. Like, something that was insightful for me was a lot of us think that we need everything figured out early on. Like, we have to have the best car, the best house, and know exactly where we're going. But her story shows that that's not how it works. Right now, our job is to learn, gain experience, and figure out what we actually enjoy. So, Elijah, where do cadets struggle with self-advocacy?
A lot of cadets just don't speak up what they have on their mind. They kind of wait for other people to do it for them, I feel like. Um, it definitely takes practice. I think there's opportunities here at the academy to practice that and better yourself in that area.
I totally agree. I think the biggest struggle is, like you said, they have a hard time speaking up for what they want. Like, it's a culture of not wanting to stand out. But if you don't communicate your goals, they'll get overlooked and you'll never accomplish them. This conversation covers a lot, from career pivots and leadership to work life balance and taking ownership of your path.
And if nothing else, it's a reminder that there's no single blueprint for success in the Coast Guard.
Let's get into it. This is First Class Kevin Pandorf, and you're listening to Core Conversations, a podcast of the United States Coast Guard Academy Alumni Association. I'm here in the Alumni Center, Studio 1887, with my co-host, Tara King Clark. And we're excited to welcome this episode's alumni guest, Lieutenant Commander Katie Williams, class of 2012. Katie, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Now I'm going to put you on the clock. In 60 seconds, can you run us through your career?
Yes. So as you said, I graduated in 2012. I graduated with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I went straight to Sector Mobile as a apprentice marine inspector, so that's under the prevention umbrella. And then from there, I went to grad school at the University of Michigan, where I got a master's of naval architecture and marine engineering, and also a master's of industrial and operations engineering. From there, I went to the office of EG Eng, and I spent 1 year there. I short toured, and I went to Sector Boston, where I did a second tour as an inspector, which was my journeyman marine inspector tour. And then from there, I went to headquarters at the Marine Safety Center for 4 years, and then now I'm at Sector San Francisco, where I am the assistant chief of inspections. And then this summer, I'll be taking the prevention department head job.
Seems like a jam-packed career there. So now I want to center it back to the academy. Can you take us back to when you were a cadet? What did you think your Coast Guard career would look like at that point, and how differently did it actually turn out?
So I will say that when I first came to the academy, I was like, I'm going to be a cutterman. I'm going to spend, I love boats. I'm going to be on the water. I didn't love my time as a cadet on the cutters, so I was like, what path might be more appropriate for me? And so I actually ended up applying for all land jobs from the academy, not knowing the difference between prevention and response. And so I went straight to prevention, which I think we can probably talk about this later, but that is the path for me. So at the time, I was like, well, I want to go to grad school on the Coast Guard. So how do I get to my goal as fast as possible? So I had applied to grad school immediately after my first tour, which was going to be 9 years total with my academy payback and my grad school payback. And then I was like, and then I'll get out of the Coast Guard and see what's next. Well, fast forward, I'm here at 14 years. So obviously that changed. I said at the time that if I wasn't having fun, then I would get out and find something else, but I'm still here. So the prevention path has been fun for me. And I now plan on doing the whole 20 years because I have 6 years to go. So why not, right?
Exactly. Get it done. So I want to go back to you said that you were having fun and you were looking like if you weren't having fun, you'd get out. So was there a moment where you realized, all right, I'm in for the long haul. I'm going to do this?
Leaving Boston, that was what, 2021. So I was at 9 years at that point. And I went to the Marine Safety Center and I absolutely loved the job I was doing. So I had no reason why I'd want to get out. And so when I left there, I was at 13 years and I was like, I'm still having fun. So I looked for a job that my husband is also in the Coast Guard, could go together. And the inspections has really been what I've been exposed to my entire time in the Coast Guard. And so I found a role of the chief of inspections, overseeing the jobs that I've done before. And then I just went, well, now I'm at 14 years. Like, why would I not take it to 20?
Yeah, I like that. So when did you realize that prevention was the right fit for you? Like what stuck out?
So, I mean, the first week I was in prevention, people were so nice. And I was like, this is awesome. And then for me, I've always been interested in boats and ships. And the prevention path is just how do ships work? How do you get these systems to do these insane things like taking natural gas and cooling it down to negative 163 degrees Celsius, which is like a 600 to 1 ratio, and put it in liquid form and then transport it at that temperature across the globe. Like the technology that's in those is just incredible. So learning all of those systems was just really exciting to me. So I just found that the people were nice and friendly. We have a good work-life balance, and then also just the information that we were learning was exciting to me.
So then for cadets interested in like engineering, but like they're unsure about a float or aviation, what should they understand about prevention? Like, is this what they should do?
So my personal opinion is prevention is a very well kept secret. It's probably the best kept secret. People don't, especially at the academy, you're just not exposed to it unless you're fortunate enough to have a teacher who is in that path. And it offers one, when you get out of the Coast Guard, there are so many career opportunities that you could take if you wanted to do the same thing after the Coast Guard. But two, I think it's to me it's fun. I also get to come home every night. I have a family. I have 3 children with my 4th on the way, and I'm able to do both the Coast Guard and family life, and so I think that was a huge draw for me as well, and then also, my husband is an aviator, and we've been able to pair that and still both stay in the Coast Guard and stay together for most of the time in the Coast Guard. So, prevention to me is a path that is well-kept secret, and, people should be more interested in doing it.
So now you said that you stayed with your husband for most of the time.
Yeah.
I want to go to a time where somebody told you no, right? What was going through your head in that moment when they told you that you weren't allowed to co-locate with your husband and you weren't allowed to be with him?
Yeah, so a background on that, I had gone to grad school. I had met my husband when we were both stationed in Mobile. He was at the air station there, and I was at the sector there. I knew leaving Mobile, he had 2 years left in Mobile, and I was gonna have 2 years in Michigan. I'm like, "Okay, I can accept that. I'm going to grad school, that's 2 years, and then we'll be stationed together after that." So we got married in between my 2 years of grad school, and everyone had told me like, "Oh, if you're married, they'll co you," and I naively believed that to be true. So they called me after grad school and they said, "You're going to headquarters," and my husband got a call saying, "You're going to Cape Cod. That's the closest we can get you to your wife." It was a shock. It was, something that I mean, honestly, I got a phone call I got a voicemail in the airport flying back from seeing him for a weekend, and I just bawled in the airport. I As a person, I don't agree with it. I think you keep families together and make it work. So for me, I went to headquarters and my husband went to Cape Cod. And so when I was there, I was unhappy. And you could probably talk to the people I worked with. I was not in the best of spirits being there. But I was like, I'm not going to be the person who just sits here and does no work. Like, that's just not me. So I had a conversation with my O5 at the time, and I was like, I want to be stationed with my husband. Like, I will work, but I want to be stationed with my husband. And so he's like, okay, how about you give me 2 years and we'll consider letting you leave early. And so I also went to the office chief at the time and I said, I thought that the Coast Guard valued family. And I just feel like for me, you don't value family because my husband is in Cape Cod and I am here. And he was like, that makes me really sad that you feel that way, but you're here. So just, do your best while you're here and we'll see what we can do. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best for 2 years. I think because I had had that conversation and I did try to perform well, that when the opportunity arose a year after I was there and they had more graduate students coming in than billets available, they had one extra spot. And because I had had that conversation, they allowed me to leave after 1 year, which was wonderful. So then when my husband had 3 years left on his tour, I got a 3-year tour. And since then, we've been aligned. So I think my advice for something like that would be don't burn bridges because you have to be your best advocate, but also don't do it in a way that will burn bridges and do it in a respectful way.
So then for junior officers balancing career and family, what's something you wish you knew earlier?
Being willing to have those hard conversations with those who you work for and advocate for yourself.
I think that's a great lesson, because I think that there's always not everybody has the perfect career or the perfect next assignment. So I think it is super helpful. I'd be curious to know, Katie, and this isn't one of the questions we had in here, but how did you day to day deal with that for that first year? You didn't know. You thought you were going to be apart. You were already 2 years apart from your husband. Moving into another billet where you were likely going to be apart for many more years. Like, how did you get through that year?
So my command was really helpful. We had the ability to telework. I know right now telework isn't as readily available. So I actually teleworked from Massachusetts. So
Cool.
I bought in bulk flights. So Thursday afternoon, I would Uber from work to the airport and I would fly to Massachusetts, telework Friday, I'll have the weekend, and then telework Monday. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 3 in the morning and took a 6 a.m. flight. And then I Ubered to work on Tuesday. And I did that very often. I mean, not every weekend, but very often because to me, you know, to have a strong relationship with the person that you chose to spend your life with, you need to be together. So I sacrificed my sleep and my time and a little bit of my paycheck. But that was not my priority. My priority was spending more time with my husband. So that luckily it was only a year, but I would have done it for all 4 years if I had to.
So then there was another time you were told no. You initially wanted to go to the Marine Safety Center. What made you decide to reach back out?
Yeah. So the background on that one is I had short divorce from 1 year from my payback, and my husband really wanted to go work at Air Station Washington. And I knew that he was going to be a good candidate for that job. And I was like, okay, well, if we're going to go back to DC, I want to go to a job that is going to be career enhancing for me. And so I wanted to go back and basically finish the payback tour that I had short toured from, but in a different office. Marine Safety Center from when I was a cadet was always an office that I thought sounded amazing. For those who don't know, the Marine Safety Center is basically the engineering firm that looks at engineering designs for commercial ships. To some, that might sound boring. For me, I thought that was an incredible opportunity. So I reached out to the program manager at the time and said, I'm transferring. I only did a year in my marine safety engineering payback. I'd like the opportunity to go back to a marine safety engineer payback. And he said, well, we have too many people coming in uh, this year, so I don't believe there's going to be a spot available. And I was like, okay, well, you said no to me. Who else can I talk to? And so I looked to see who was working in those offices. And um, at the time, Captain Comfer, who's now Admiral Select Comfer, well deserved for him. He was the office chief of CG Eng, and I had worked with him previously at Mobile. He had come in as the prevention department head. The last few months he was there before I transferred, and he was really passionate about marine safety engineering. And he talked to me about the Marine Safety Center. And even though I'd already known I really liked it, just hearing somebody else who'd worked there. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know if this is kosher, but I'm just going to email this. I was being like, hey, I don't know if you remember. So I did. He called me back within 2 minutes of me sending an email and being like, "Katie, I remember you. Yes, this was so exciting. That you'd wanna come back to this." Because I said in the email, I didn't leave the job because I wasn't interested in the work I was doing. I left the job because I wanted to be with my family. And he's like, "I'm really excited to see that you're, excited about this type of job." Because "I can't make any promises. They see how this plays out, how many people are leaving, how many people are coming in, but I'm really glad that you reached out to me, so now I know that you're interested." Believe that the only reason I ended up at the Marine Safety Center, who, by the way, he ended up going to be the commanding officer of the Marine Safety Center and is one of the leaders who I look up to. I really think that me reaching out to him put my name out there as a possibility. So again, when the opportunity arose and they had more people that were leaving and they had an extra spot, because I had reached out to him, he's like, "Oh, well, there's this extra spot, Katie Williams said that she was interested in going to this job. Let me see if we can put her in that role." I don't think that that ever would have happened without me reaching out to him. So I advocated for myself, again, in a way that I try to be respectful because I do know that sixes do not have a lot of time. They are very busy, but the fact that he reached out to me almost immediately, I was really excited about the process. I knew that there was a possibility I wouldn't end up there, but again, if you don't ask, then the answer is always gonna be no.
So then what does this experience say about networking for Coast Guard junior officers?
Is huge, and I know everyone talks about it, but to me, I only relied on the relationships with somebody who, like, I had previously known, but the Coast Guard is small. I mean, just being here at the academy, I've run into so many people I haven't seen in years. So, it's being a good relation on the Coast Guard, I do think helps you long term because you can rely on some of those relationships and, reach out to somebody.
So then how do you build those relationships before you actually need?
So, I'm not of the mindset that you build relationships just to build them. I am like, it's a natural thing. So the relationships that I've built, I would like to say I'm not building them because I want to use this relationship in the future. It's just something that I have a relationship with somebody because we've worked together in the past and we became friends, or, I've worked for them and I really enjoyed working for them. So to me, it's just be yourself and be a person, and then those happen themselves.
And don't be afraid to hit send on that email.
I will tell you, I was nervous about sending the email just because I'm like, "What if he's like, why is she emailing me?" But
Then anyone listening, listen to Katie and just hit that send button. I feel you. That is an awkward thing to do. And, I mean, for me, even recently, I had a friend reach out and ask if I could help make a connection with someone else because she's trying to get a job. And, it feels weird when you're doing it. You're like, okay, I'm going to connect with this other person. Is this person going to be offended? Are they going to think, why is this person reaching out to me? But I hit send and they're connecting now, like sometime this week for coffee. So like it is totally okay to do that. And I think people generally want to help.
yes, and actually a great one for that. So I went to grad school with Commander Ian Oviatt, who works here, and one his student, first class Mitrick, Hazel Mitrick, she is coming to San Francisco. So he's like, "Hey, email Commander Williams." So this morning we had coffee because she's coming to the unit that I work at, so we could meet up. And I was like, but I'm so happy to do something like that, and it was just because he and I had had a prior relationship, and I had reached out to him before, and that was awesome. I got to meet her before she came, and I got to answer some of her questions, and I mean, I'll be on maternity leave when she comes, but, when I come back to work, like, we've already now had this personal, connection, this personal relationship, so to me, it's just wonderful that you can use other relationships to meet somebody else in the process.
Well, it's wonderful because she is somebody she can lean on now. Like, she has somebody that she's been introduced to, so she's not going there not knowing anybody. It's a little more comforting.
Exactly. Exactly.
You mentioned maternity leave. You're gonna be going out here on maternity leave soon for the 4th time. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about work-life balance and how you make you talked a little bit about it being a prevention, and that prevention as a field is super helpful for that. But, you have 3 kids all under age 5 at home, 1 on the way. How has balancing family and work changed how you lead?
So that's a great question. I'll say that as a cadet, I was a perfectionist. I was a mechanical engineer, which meant that I slept maybe 2, 3 hours a night. I'd stay awake until that project was done. And I actually think becoming a mom made me unlearn how to be a perfectionist. So I learned, like, you know what? 80, 90%, that's all you need. You don't need to get to 100%. And when I get home, I am mom. Like my children, like you said, I'm gonna have 4 kids under the age of 5, and 3 of those are boys. So those who have boys know that life is chaotic. Um, my life when I am home, yes, I get duty calls. Yes, I'll answer those. I want my time with my kids to be special. I don't have this sounds wrong, but I don't have the mental capacity to think about things that are going on at work, unless, of course, a duty call comes up. But, like, I used to think when I would be in like, I'd go home and I'd think about a conversation I had, like, "How could I have done this better? How could I don't do that anymore because I don't have time for it."
Yeah.
So I do think it's made me be able to separate work and life way better, and also, I don't hold on maybe to the stresses of other people. Yes, I wanna help them, but I don't let it eat away at me like I used to. So I think becoming a mom, probably just for survival mode, has made me probably a better person because I'm or even a better leader because I'm not, hyper focused on what could I have done better and letting it eat away at me.
Well, there's certainly no perfection in parenting. As a parent myself, you're never gonna be perfect. Like, it's just impossible. So I think that resonates with me for sure. Um, you know, it's one thing you said you had to unlearn perfectionism, which I think is, that's a personal trait. But how do you think your overall approach to leadership changed? So it's one thing to be a perfection, but how do you feel like it changed the way you might lead your people?
So part of it is there has to be more trust. The people that are doing the work, if yes, there's obviously oversight, that's what my job is for, but I have to trust that the work that they're doing is right, and I can't micromanage. I don't have the time to micromanage. So you kind of learn to prioritize, like, what is the most important thing that I'm gonna focus on? And if it's not that important, I'm not gonna give it more than 10 minutes. But if it's something that's important, okay, this is where I might spend my, 1 hour, 2 hours, or whatever during the day. And I do think it's prioritization, knowing where to spend your energy, and then also just letting the people do their jobs and not try to get involved if you don't have to.
So, how can the people under you build that trust? And how can you build the trust in them through you?
That is a great question. Unfortunately, I think that every time when you go to a new, unit, you're gonna have to build that trust with your command. So it comes down to when you start doing the briefings for a situation that's going on, and I start asking questions based off of the answers you give me to your questions. Like, I'm gonna know if you know your stuff or you don't know your stuff. And part of it is just time and experience. This is the first time they've gotten a call. I'm gonna have to be a little bit more helpful and, ask them more questions or guide them a little bit more. But the people who've been doing it for 3 years and they've been doing like they gave me the recommendation, I'm like, "I concur, thank you, continue." Like, it was as simple as that because, they've proven to me over time that they know their stuff. They, they've done the research that they need to do, and then we don't have to spend all the time talking about all the other things.
You talked about how it's important for you to be approachable. And I was just wondering if you could kind of talk us through that, what that means, because you had some really great points about being willing to have conversations when maybe you don't have the answer. You might be a younger officer. So why is it important important for you to be so approachable?
So I do think approachable is a really important leadership quality. I want people to feel comfortable coming to me when they don't know what's going on or they don't have the best recommendation. Because if you just come to me and say, "This is what I recommend," I'm gonna try to I'm gonna ask questions like, "Okay, well, why how did you get to that?" And there are times when I give a recommendation where I'm like, I'm at like a 50-50 on how this one goes. And sometimes talking through, okay, this is what I was thinking on this recommendation. This is what I'm thinking through this recommendation. And then when you talk to somebody else about it, then you get their opinions and then you can actually come to, I think, a better decision than if you just come with the one recommendation if you aren't sure. So I want to be approachable. I don't want people to be afraid of being like, I don't actually know what the right answer is, but these are the things that I've thought through to get to why I'm talking to you right now.
And why do you think that's so important in the field of prevention in particular?
So prevention to me, I think what was appealing is you don't have to make in general, you don't have to make a decision in 2 minutes. You can really use the time, you might have a few hours depending on the situation or a few days to make decisions. And so you can really think through, the scenarios that could happen and then how do we mitigate some of those bad scenarios from happening. And I think when you have the ability to come if someone comes to me, like I think you come to a better decision when you've thought through all of the possibilities, when you're willing to be like, "These are the things I've thought through," instead of just being like, "This is my recommendation," but they're, like, not 100% solid on that recommendation, and then it's gonna make me ask more questions, and then it's probably gonna make them feel more doubtful about it, instead of just being like, "This is what I thought about," and then we come to a decision together. And then I actually think that makes people feel more confident overall because if they came to me with a recommendation that maybe I wasn't 100% in agreement with, and then I go with a different thing, I think that makes them feel like they did something wrong, which isn't always it's not really always the case. Their answer could be right, but I'm thinking about it from a perspective that is different. I have to now in this position now, it's not just like, okay, what do the regulations say? It's like, okay, well, the captains, they're dealing with how do I keep the port safe? How do I make sure that I'm still facilitating commerce? How do I make sure that my port partners aren't going to call me being like, why did you do this? And so, I'm starting to have to move into thinking more of the big picture. And so while the answer that they maybe have recommended to me was the safest option, it might not be the best option for all of the things that the captains, the commanding officers have to think about. And so if you come to me and you don't want them to think like, oh, well, I gave a bad recommendation. It's like, no, that's not the case. It's just, let me explain to you the other things that the captain has to think about so maybe we can come to something in between that kind of meets. Yes, we're still keeping this safe,
Mm,
but we're also still allowing commerce to happen. We're not keeping a boat stuck in a port that has 6 other boats lined up. So now they can't remove the containers from the ship because we have this one ship here. We're gonna let the ship move to anchorage so that they could still have 6 other ships come in the next 2 days, you know?
yeah,
Like, yes, the safe option is keep that boat there.
right. That's great. I think that, yeah, the ability to feel like you don't have to have the answer either is can be very empowering because then you figure it out together. It's sort of that collaboration, which I think is great. We moved a little bit away from the work-life balance, but I am curious to know what kind of advice you might offer to those young officers that are looking to start families.
So I will say that I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. Actually, I think I wanted to be a mom more than anything else. So that was always gonna be in my future, or at least that was my hope. And luckily, I met a person who had the same aspirations as me. I think that would have been a deal breaker if the person I married did not want children. But timing, everyone always talks about timing. Make sure you get this call, make sure you get okay, well, life doesn't always work that way. I thought I was gonna have kids earlier in life, but it took me a little bit longer to start my family. Now, am I happy with how it's turned out now? Yes, absolutely. But at the time, I was like, I'm ready to have children. Why can't I have children? So everyone would be like, oh, well, the right time to do it is after. Well, I don't agree with that statement because you should do what's right for you. Luckily, I have a partner, my husband. We are equal partners in this. together. And I think that's really important because both being Coast Guard officers, there are times that you're going to have to be the parent and the other one has an opportunity or they're not home. So, you have to be able to balance that. A great example is my husband was the project officer for the assumption of command for Vice Admiral Bazella. Our kids, every single one of them got a stomach bug a week leading up. And I was like, you know what? You have a lot going on right now. I'm going to stay home with the kids because this is, you have a big project going on and my work's not as busy. And luckily my command is very accommodating for stuff like that. I can do a lot of work. So I was able to be given situational telework. Still getting some work done. It is hard when you're balancing children and getting work done. But to give my husband the opportunity to be able to work on the project that he was assigned. And he's done the exact same thing for me when I have a big project coming up or I have something big or I have a big meeting. He's like, you know what? I'm not as busy today. I'm going to stay home with the kids. So I think one, it's really important to find somebody in your life who can balance that with you. And then we've also tried for our careers to kind of like offset. So last unit, I was at a staff tour and he was operational flying the commandant and the DHS secretary around. So he was traveling a lot. But I chose a job where I was home every night. I didn't have duty and I had more flexibility. So when the kids got sick or something came up, I could be more available. Now we switch. He's in a staff tour and I'm operational so that there's always going to be a parent that is available when needed. And so I think, yes, it might not work out all the time that you are able to balance that, but my hope is next I go to a staff tour so we can go operational. And so it's one of those things that you kind of have to balance um, career and life, like to me, it was more important to be able to have this like staff tour, operational tour than it was for both of us to the next highest job that will help our careers. That's our priority comes down to what works best for our family and not necessarily what advances both of our careers together. He told like the detailers this last time, he said, my wife's job this time takes priority and I will take a secondary job so she can have the operational experience that, she wants.
Awesome. What great role models you guys are for your growing family. It's so inspiring to see.
So now we're going to talk more about leadership and accountability on a larger scale. So to give a contextual background here, I'm referencing the 2023 loss of the Titan submersible operated by OceanGate during a deep sea expedition to the Titanic wreck site. Katie served as a technical advisor at the Marine Safety Center. So now that we got the settings set, how did you first get pulled into the Titan investigation? And was it something that you expected at all?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that second question first. It was not something I expected, but it was a very cool opportunity. Generally speaking, so the reason why the Coast Guard just gets involved is, prevention falls under the Marine Safety Mission. That's one of the 11 missions of the Coast Guard. So, part of prevention is investigation. So that's kind of how, we got involved from that perspective. How did Katie get involved? So I actually think it was right place, right time. So when a major marine casualty happens, like the Titan, they usually pull a subject matter expert from the Marine Safety Center. Now, to Titan, we don't have submersible experts. We don't have carbon fiber experts. So who at the Marine Safety Center would be a person for this? And so they had, again, Captain Conferency, bringing him up again, a mentor of mine. When I was in Mobile, they had a oil water bypass case. Basically, this vessel was discharging oil illegally. And so when I was in grad school, I got subpoenaed to testify against this vessel, and it ended up they were guilty on like 9 counts, $2.2 million. So Captain Comfort, who was there at the time, witnessed me, on the stand testifying against this company. So I think, part of it is I was in the back of his mind, like, okay, she's done something similar to this before, or at least in an investigative, aspect. And then I was actually in charge of the smallest branch at the Marine Safety Center. I only had 3 people working for me and then 4 contractors. He was, well, who has the capacity to take on a project like this? Because it's going to be a few years. And so I think those two things coupled together, he was like, well, maybe Katie would be a good fit. And so he called me into his office and he's like, what do you think? And I was immediately like, of course I want to do this. But then I was like, okay, wait a second. I have a 7-month-old child and a 2-year-old. Like, that might be a lot. And so I was like, I am very interested, but I would like to talk to my husband first because I need to understand like what this time commitment looks like. And so he's like, yes, no problem. So I call my husband. He's like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. You're saying yes. I'm like, okay, I'm saying yes. He's like, we'll figure everything out on the back end. And so I talked to Mr. Neubauer, who is the chair of the Titan, the Marine Board of Investigation, and I was like, what is the time commitment going to look like? He's like, there will be some travel, but it's not going to be a lot of travel, and it's going to be scheduled further out. We'll work with you because we understand you have a young family. Again, also a wonderful mentor. So I was like, I'm in. Let's do it.
What was the time frame that you were called? Like, when had the actual
So
incident occurred? And
days. I'm
seriously,
talking like 5 days.
wow.
Yeah, they
And
decided
this was like all over the news at the. I mean,
Mhm.
I just remember it being a big deal.
It was, and I had heard about it on the news, and then when they called me, like, "Do you want to be part of this?" I'm like, wow, that is an amazing opportunity. So, of course, and then my husband was like, you got to do it. And I'm like, thank you. So, yeah. And luckily, the travel, like, yes, there was travel. And there were times that my husband and I were both TDY at the same time, but that's why wonderful grandparents came in to help with taking care of the children when that happened.
Thanks for the grandparents, right?
Yes.
So, what did your role look like day to day?
So, day to day, it was just dependent on the day. So, in the beginning, we interviewed probably majority of the Ocean Gate employees, which was a lot because there was a lot of turnover. And so there were times there where we'd have like an interview a day, which each interview was probably about 2 to 3 hours. So I was on those interviews every day. A lot of others, some of the time though, it was more like individualized. So I worked a lot in my role. I was focused more on the engineering aspect. So I actually worked a lot with the National Transportation Safety Board, and they have a person who has a doctorate in material science who, to me, is actually the reason why we figured out how this thing failed, or at least came to a conclusion of there really is there's two main ways it could have failed, but he is the reason how we got to that conclusion. And so I worked with him a lot and, talking about his work and understanding what he was looking at. And I learned so much about carbon fiber that I did not know before. And then, we worked with industry members who build submersibles. We worked with classification societies who oversee the building of other submersibles, just so that we had a much better understanding of how things, in this world work. We talked to NASA, we talked to Boeing, we talked to all these people. Stockton Rush, the CEO, would tout all these things like, oh, we worked with NASA, we worked with Boeing, we worked with the Applied Physics Lab in Washington. But what did that actually mean? So, like, we had to figure that stuff out. So we talked to all of these people. So on a day-to-day basis, some weeks were really busy where we'd have an interview a day, and then other weeks was a little bit slower where we were probably planning for those future interviews or looking at documents. There were so many documents that we had to go through. Tom Whalen, who was the lead investigator, did almost all of that stuff. He was just incredible. His life was probably taken for 2 years straight. He had a lot more to do than he would usually send me the things that were relevant to me, but he had to go through all of it himself first.
So, then what would you say is the biggest takeaway for cadets? What should they take away from this situation?
Well, I mean, seize opportunities, I think is the best thing. Sometimes it really is right place, right time. Like, I do feel like this role for me was just that. But when given the opportunities, take it. When I was given the opportunity to do the oil water bypass case, I jumped on it. It was one of those things like, well, this rarely happens. It was like the only one that happened in Mobile, and I was there for 3 years. So jump on those opportunities because that opportunity I feel like led to this other opportunity.
So let's talk really quick, high level. How was this case so different from what you typically see in the prevention field?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this submersible was made of carbon. Carbon fiber is not a material used in deep sea applications. It's not. and it's because it's unproven. And so in order to use something like that, there really needs to be a much more heavy engineering analysis and then test to prove that system. So just using carbon fiber in and of itself was in I'll even use Stockton Rush's term, it was innovative. The problem with this situation was that he didn't go about it the correct way. In his defense, he dove this thing to the Titanic 13 times successfully. So he did actually achieve his goal, but the problem was he did not know where the end goal was. He didn't know how many times that this submersible could dive because he didn't have the engineering analysis or the testing to understand where that line was. And he just pushed it until it was too late. And then even there, he had a system on board that he touted. He called it the real-time monitoring system. He said that this thing is going to scream at me and let me know that this is going to fail. The irony is he actually had the information that he recorded to tell him it was failing, he just chose to ignore it. He didn't actually look into it further or investigate it further, and he completely just dismissed the information that was provided to him. So, do I think that was preventable? 100%. I think that people died when they did not need to.
The takeaway is that like carbon fiber is not a material that is something you would have known much about. So you were totally comfortable though, or to step into a space and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to investigate this, even though I don't know much about carbon fiber either. Let's figure it out.
Learn
So
together.
seize
Yes.
the day, you know,
Yes.
like don't be afraid. I think the lesson is don't be afraid to try something that you don't have exposure to.
That's a great takeaway.
That was my takeaway, at least.
No,
I don't know
that's what
about
I
you,
thought.
Kevin.
Full circle. It came all back around. You got presented this great opportunity. It would have and probably did put a lot of stress on your family. But you guys put it together. You and your husband worked. You found a solution, and you got to an end goal. And
Exactly.
you
And
got
we
to
called in the grandparents for reinforcement when we needed to.
back up right
Yeah.
there. See, everybody's got each other's back. So now, going off that, how big of a role did culture play in this? Like the culture in your family, the culture at work. Like, it seems like it's a big part of your entire career so far.
Yeah, so, I think the Coast Guard in general has shifted from this mindset, Coast Guard first, and I do think we are shifting to understand that in order to be successful, you have to at least consider work-life balance. And, for me personally, my family takes priority over the Coast Guard. So if you separate me, now I don't know any time. If you separate me from my family, I'm not staying in the Coast Guard because that goes against my values, which is valuing my family. And I really do think I've seen a positive shift in the Coast Guard where we are moving more towards that and understanding that versus no Coast Guard first and who cares about your family. I cannot stand the phrase your family didn't come in your sea bag. Because guess what? Guess what? You were somebody's family. You came from someone, you were part of a family, and if your parents weren't available to you or they were always gone, how did that affect you? I do understand that there are times that you're gonna be away, and sometimes I actually think that's better. The kids learn resilience if you're not always there. But never be available is, to me, a detriment to your family. So you have to be able to balance that, right? And so I think the Coast Guard is learning that finally.
So now I want to transition into our closing segment. We're going to go over advice for cadets, young officers, and young alumni. So if you could go back and talk to yourself as a cadet, what would you say?
Don't take yourself too seriously. Life gets better. I think as a cadet, I was so afraid to do something wrong. And so every decision I made, my husband was like, "Oh, I remember you as a fourth class, you were so locked on." My husband is not that way. So, we're very different. And I feel like I was just so afraid to do something wrong. But then going out in the real Coast Guard, I'm like, "Oh, these are just people. Just treat people like they're people and humans. Let's be real people." And so I don't know, for me as a cadet, maybe relax a little bit. Like, it's okay to mess up.
I like that answer. That's nice. And explains it a lot. I can see both sides of that.
Yeah.
I play a little bit more on your husband's side, but I can see where you're coming from. So now on to our next question. What do you want cadets to understand about career pivots, especially when things don't go as planned?
Yeah, so I do think, and it's not wrong because I do know most cadets go afloat, but, like, float doesn't have to be your only option. And I do think there is value in going afloat. Obviously, I didn't, so I'm speaking from other people. It's okay if you don't like what you're doing, it's okay to try to find a path that's different, that is more aligned with what your priorities are. So for me, prevention fit my personality type the best. And so luckily I got in there first, but that doesn't mean that if you do a first tour and you realize color life's not for you or anything else isn't for me, let me pivot and try. One of my coworkers, her husband was a response officer, and then they were dating and he was like, "Oh, this prevention world looks so awesome." He's changed career paths and he went to be a prevention officer instead. So it's not the end of the world. I will say people are making rank a lot faster, so some of those decisions might have to be made a little bit faster, but it doesn't, especially after the first tour, there is absolutely nothing that says you cannot pivot to something different.
And I would think you'd have a gut sense after that first tour of whether or not you like what you just did, right?
Where should I go?
Gonna know.
And I guess another piece of advice is, ask if you're interested in learning about a different community. Ask if you can go shadow them for a little bit. If you have a good supervisor, they're gonna say yes, because you should know what you're getting yourself into before you make a huge life change and then realize, wait, I didn't really realize this is what it was gonna be like. So if you're interested in doing something different, just ask the question, hey, do you mind if I go shadow the sector for a little bit? Or, oh, do you mind if I try to go to the air station, take a flight with them? Something that you're interested in, advocate for yourself.
So then, what does leadership look like when no one's watching?
So for me, I try to just be the same person when someone's watching, when someone's not. But to me, you shouldn't look different to how you interact with someone in front of someone senior or junior to you. You should be the same person regardless.
So now you're approaching your 20-year career here. What does success actually look like for you?
So I had a lot to think about, like what shaped me. So I actually think if I had to pinpoint like a leadership quality that I think actually makes a really good leader, it's somebody with really strong emotional intelligence. If somebody is coming at you when you are not in the right mental space or they're trying to correct you, that's not the appropriate time and it's not going to have the effect that it needs. So somebody who understands, this is the time that I need to be strict and hold somebody accountable. And this is the time that I need to sit down and just be Katie and have a conversation with you and figure out what's going on in your life. I think that goes a long way. And I think that is what makes a true leader. And the best leaders I've had, which I have been fortunate to have a lot, have very strong emotional intelligence. I don't know if that directly answered your question, but
No, that
yeah.
aligns perfectly. Actually, fits up very well. Final and last question of the day. So, if there's one message you hope young alumni take from this conversation, what would it be?
Well, one, really try to treat people like they're people, have strong emotional intelligence, but also do what's right for you and don't let somebody else tell you this is what you need to do. If you really want to go to grad school second tour and everyone's like, that's not the best decision, you do what's right for you. This is what aligns with my goals. My goals is I want to go to grad school. And if I don't make a 20-year career, I don't care because I really wanted to go to grad school and I achieved that goal. So you need to do what's right for you and don't let somebody else tell you. I mean, you can, of course, ask advice, but don't let somebody else tell you this is the career that you need to do.
Well, I just want to give a special thank you to Commander Katie Williams for giving up time from her family, her life, and her job to come and support Studio 1887. Thank you again.
You're
I
very
greatly
welcome.
appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
That was our conversation for today. Thank you for joining us here in Studio 1887. Please stick around for a few more minutes as I spotlight what your impact looks like in action here at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. In a short closing segment, we're calling the Alumni Impact Interlude. Financial support from the Alumni Association is a game changer for the overall cadet experience. Learn more from the following cadet who is directly benefiting from your support.
It's time for the Alumni Impact Interlude. I'm here with First Class Ellis McLaughlin to talk about drones and how they are used here at CGA. First Class McLaughlin, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for this opportunity.
So as you know, the Alumni Association has been working closely with the Academy to help with the drone programs here, namely receiving and gifting 2 drone assets, and forgive me if I pronounce these wrong, but the Skydio X2D
Yes.
and Red Cat FPV kit. So Ellis, can you walk me through the drone program here at CGA?
Well, thank you, Alumni Association, for the Skydio X2D. I can confidently say that is my favorite platform at the Academy in terms of our drones. And here at the Academy, we have 2 classes. We have a directed study and 2 capstone, which are encompassing all of the short-range unmanned aerial systems, SRUAS, as we know as drones. And the first class was introduced in the past 2 years or so, while the second class was made just this past fall semester. In the first class, we were able to get our Part 107 qualification, which allowed us to have an SRUAS license. And we also took the time to become qualified on the platforms, such as the Paradanafi and the Skydio X2D. And the second class, we got to build our very own drones and understand kind of the theory of what other drones, such as underwater drones, fixed-wing drones, and the other quadcopters that we can use for the future. And the directed study has been putting together the Red Cat FPV kit, and they're going to be in charge of operating all of the different missions we do at the Academy with it. And the 2 capstone groups, there is a aviation mishap scenes and aids to navigation capstone, which we are going to take the drones and use their mapping capabilities and reconstruct 2D and 3D mapping onto a computer through drone imagery capture via stitching the photos together.
Wow, that sounds amazing. What do you love about drones, and how long have you been involved in the drone program?
I've been involved since just about early last year, so my second class year. I love the drones because it's such a versatile mechanism, and it's really coming into the Coast Guard scene as something that we can use throughout any mission.
How important was securing those drones to the success of cadet training?
Extremely important. Like I said, these 2 capstone groups, we've been using these platforms, and for classes, it's basically used every single class, weather permitting, to get everyone qualified on every single platform and for everything we do.
And you guys are just flying those drones here at the Academy? Are you allowed to fly them here, or do you have to go somewhere else to practice?
Yes, we usually fly them out on the parade field or on Cadet Memorial Field.
Okay.
And we get clearance from Groton Airport and the Navy base right across, and we're able to just fly them all day, every day, rain or sunshine.
How big are these drones?
I'd say the drone is I imagine it's like a toy-size Yorkie Terrier. And then if you put like wings on each dog and then you just flew it up in the air, it's also under 55 pounds. The Skydio and the Paranafi, I'd say, from picking them up, they're super lightweight, definitely under 15 pounds, easy to fly.
How long does it take for a cadet to get qualified on a drone?
Truly depends on how their class schedule is and how fast they want to be qualified. If you take the class, they make sure that everyone's qualified on both platforms by the end of a semester.
Okay.
And to maintain that qual, I have lots of class time off, so I can just constantly fly every day if I want to.
So why is it important for cadets to understand how to operate drones?
So U.S. Coast Guard units all over are slowly phasing out the Paranafi and introducing that Skydio X2D and a Skydio X10. And this means that cadets on their summer assignments and reporting even to their first unit could potentially be the lead in carrying out the drone's operations. And there's also a new enlisted rate in the Coast Guard called Robotics Mission Specialist, which can be focused on operating and maintaining the SRUAS drones. And as future officers following our 4 years at the Academy, we can aid in drones operations and these specialists when operating in drug interdiction, search and rescue, and port security.
Amazing. How cool to be able to add value like right away at your first unit with, these new technologies. I think that's so awesome. So is it true that cadets were able to fly the drone that delivered the coin for the coin toss at Secretary's Cup this year at Fenway Park, or last year, I should say?
Yes, so the four of us were trained on flying the Red Cat drone, and by a randomized name selection amongst all of us, First Class Jaden Coons was chosen to fly the coin in. The coin was attached to the top of the Red Cat drone via like a Velcro mechanism, and it landed near the center of field so that it could be picked up and tossed while the drone flew back to where we were standing. It was truly an unforgettable experience and something that not many could attest to, especially as a cadet.
I bet. How cool is that with 10,000 in the crowd cheering you guys on? That must have been awesome.
It was amazing.
So is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
I'd like to share that the drones program at the Academy is extremely grateful for your support, and we are always looking at new innovative ways to keep the cadets up to date with the rest of the very advanced drones world. And we are quite literally taking off and are always looking forward to any resources we can acquire and want to learn as much as we can about all the different drones, hoping to get an underwater drone, maybe a fixed wing one, and much more. And in turn, this will all push us to a bigger and better Coast Guard. And we cannot thank you enough for that and this opportunity.
Well, thank you, First Class McLaughlin, and good luck at your unit. And thanks again for taking the time to talk about drones.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our alumni community for your continued engagement. You are what keep this community strong and thriving, especially our members. Membership in your alumni association matters. It empowers connections between our alumni and the Academy to develop thriving and enduring relationships. It supports state-of-the-art and margin of excellence enhancements for the Corps of Cadets. And membership also comes with some pretty cool benefits, like access to professional development and certifications, unique connection opportunities to grow your network, discounts and savings when welcoming back the whole family for homecoming, and so much more. Your membership even supports projects like this podcast. So stay connected, stay up to date, and ensure that your ties to the Long Blue Line remain strong. Become a member today at cgalumni.org/1887. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and share with your network so these stories can continue to reach and connect our community. Until next time.